Welcome, please hit the subscribe button. Have you ever wondered why some of the kindest men you know eventually become the coldest? Why the guy who used to bend over backwards for his partner suddenly won't even engage in basic conversation? Today we're diving deep into one of the most heartbreaking relationship dynamics I see over and over again. Picture this scenario. There's a man who enters relationships with genuine intentions. He believes in communication, in working through problems together, in giving people the benefit of the doubt. He's the type who thinks before speaking, who chooses patience over conflict, who genuinely wants to build something meaningful with someone he cares about. This man starts his relationship journey with an open heart. When his partner has bad days, he listens. When she needs space, he gives it. When conflicts arise, he tries to understand her perspective instead of just defending his own. He's operating from a place of love, believing that patience and understanding are the foundations of lasting relationships. But something interesting happens in this dynamic. His calmness gets misinterpreted. His willingness to listen and compromise gets seen not as strength, but as an invitation to push further. His measured responses during heated moments get labeled as indifference rather than self-control. The woman in this scenario starts testing boundaries, often without even realizing she's doing it. A sharp comment here, a dismissive gesture there. Small acts that would have been unthinkable early in the relationship slowly become routine. She's watching to see if he'll react, if he'll show her where his limits actually are. And because he's committed to being the bigger person, because he believes in working through problems rather than creating bigger ones, he absorbs it. He tells himself she's just stressed, that tomorrow will be better, that this isn't really who she is. He makes excuses for behavior that honestly shouldn't need excusing. But here's where things get dangerous. His patience, instead of being appreciated, starts getting exploited. Some women, especially those seeking emotional intensity, see a calm man as a blank canvas. They want to see him react, to feel his emotions, to know they have the power to affect him. So the testing escalates. The sarcasm becomes sharper. Criticisms become more frequent. Affection gets weaponized, withdrawn strategically to see if he'll chase it. Arguments become circular, designed not to actually solve anything but to generate emotional heat and drama. The patient man finds himself trapped in an exhausting cycle. He tries to communicate his feelings, but his words get dismissed or twisted against him. He attempts to set reasonable boundaries, but they get treated like suggestions rather than actual requirements. He shows up consistently for the relationship, but his presence becomes expected rather than appreciated. Every effort he makes to maintain peace actually feeds the dysfunction because she's learned something incredibly damaging. He'll tolerate almost anything rather than walk away.
This is where the tragedy deepens.
These aren't men who lack self-respect from the beginning. These are men who genuinely believed that love meant endurance, that real strength was measured by how much you could withstand for someone you cared about. Maybe they watched their fathers stay silent during family conflicts. Maybe they internalized messages about real men not reacting emotionally. They equated patience with maturity. And now that very patience is being used as a weapon against them. The woman often doesn't see herself as the problem here. In her mind, she's just being authentic, expressing her emotions, expecting him to step up and match her intensity. She doesn't recognize that her authenticity has become a license for disrespect. She doesn't realize that expressing emotions has transformed into emotional manipulation. She genuinely believes that if he really cared, he'd fight harder, speak louder, show more passion in response to her behavior. She mistakes his measured responses for indifference, never understanding that his calmness is actually incredible self-restraint. What she completely fails to see is the internal war this man fights every single day. The conversations he rehearses in his head that never make it to his lips because he knows they'll be twisted. The hurt accumulating in his chest like water behind a dam. The growing realization that nothing he does will ever be enough because she's not actually looking for solutions.
She's addicted to the problem itself.
He starts noticing devastating patterns. When things are peaceful, she creates chaos. When he's been particularly patient and understanding, she escalates her behavior. When he shows vulnerability, it gets filed away and used against him later. The very qualities that made him attractive initially become the things she resents most, because stability feels boring when you're chasing emotional highs.
The transformation d'OSNT happen overnight.
It's not one dramatic event that breaks him. It's the accumulation of thousands of small disrespects. Thousands of moments where his truth was swallowed to keep peace. Thousands of times his efforts went completely unacknowledged. He starts feeling invisible in his own relationship. His needs don't matter. His feelings don't count. His perspective is always somehow wrong. And the only time she really sees him, really pays attention, is when he finally stops being patient. Here's the cruel irony. The moment he sets a firm boundary, the moment he says no without apologizing, the moment his voice rises because he's finally had enough, that's when she suddenly realizes he's serious. But instead of recognizing her role in pushing him to that breaking point, she focuses entirely on his reaction. She tells friends he's become angry, that he's changed, that he's not the man she fell in love with. She rewrites history, casting herself as the victim of his transformation. But the truth lives in all the details she conveniently forgets. The months or years of disrespect that preceded his breaking point. The countless times he asked for basic consideration and was ignored. The way his gentleness was consistently mistaken for weakness and exploited accordingly. The psychological toll on these men is immense. He begins questioning everything about himself. Maybe he's too sensitive. Maybe he's not strong enough. Maybe if he just tried a different approach, communicated better, understood her perspective more deeply, things would improve. He reads articles about communication strategies. He suggests couples counseling. He bends over backward trying to see things from her viewpoint while his own perspective is never even considered. And through it all, he's slowly. His friends notice the change before he does. The light in his eyes dims. His laughter becomes rare and forced. He stops talking about his relationship because he's tired of making excuses for her behavior. He becomes a ghost of who he used to be, going through the motions of life while internally dying from emotional neglect and systematic disrespect. What makes this particularly devastating is the nature of the erosion. It's not one massive betrayal he could point to and say this is when everything changed. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each one small enough to rationalize, to excuse, to move past. But together they form a pattern of disrespect so clear that eventually even he can't deny it anymore. There's a specific moment every patient man experiences, though he might not recognize it immediately. It's when he stops explaining himself. When someone asks how his relationship is going, he just says fine instead of sharing the truth. When she does something hurtful, he doesn't bother bringing it up because he knows it won't lead anywhere productive. When he feels something, he keeps it to himself because vulnerability has become a liability. This is when his anger actually begins, not as an explosion, but as a withdrawal. Because sometimes it's the quietest thing in the room. It's the way he stops initiating affection. The way his responses become shorter. The way he stops sharing his thoughts, dreams, and fears. It's not that he's trying to punish her. He's protecting what's left of himself. And then one day, something fundamental shifts. There's no dramatic final argument. He simply stops trying. The effort that once came naturally now feels impossible. The love he felt transforms into protective indifference. He's still physically present, but emotionally he's completely checked out. This is when she panics, because a patient man going silent is terrifying in a way that anger never is. Anger can be managed, manipulated, redirected. But cold indifference is impenetrable. She suddenly wants to talk about everything he tried to discuss for months. She's ready to work on the relationship he begged her